Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I am your host, Lori Hammer, and today I have an amazing guest, Greg Stern, who is the owner and founder of Ground Up Physiotherapy. And he's going to talk to us today about chronic pain and how to get to the root cause of these issues. He has an amazing story of his own that he's going to share with us, and then he's going to give us lots of tips and tricks and how the body works and to help us all overcome our chronic pain issues. So Greg, thank you so much for being here on Take Back My Brain.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. So you're all the way up in Montreal, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
How's the weather up there?
It's getting cooler. We've had some very warm weather, and then it gets cold, it gets warm. It's very volatile, we'll say, but winter is coming. That's
It
for
is
sure.
coming. It is coming.
Yeah,
We can't
the
avoid it
leaves
in
are all
Iowa,
falling.
Canada.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So tell me about, how did you come up to, this physiotherapy? I would love to hear your story because all I got to do was just read a little bit about it, but I know it's so much deeper than what I read. So
Yeah.
share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going on 10 years now that I had a fateful ankle sprain one day playing flag football. And I had many broken bones and lots of accidents in my life prior to this injury, but this one wanted to stay around for a little longer. So basically, I sprained my ankle playing football, and weeks go by, months go by, and I'm still dealing with lingering issues.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I couldn't play at all anymore. I couldn't run. I couldn't stand for more than a few seconds without pain. And
Wow.
I was going and doing, my parents are both in the medical field. My dad's an emergency physician, and my mom's a physiotherapist herself,
Okay.
actually.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking at the moment that I would go into medicine. That was like what I thought I wanted to do. And at the time, like all I could think about was the pain I was dealing with. And I was going and trying to seek out treatment. So they were setting up appointments, the best physios in town.
Right.
Wasn't really working. So that, I was getting, lots of hands-on therapy, all the banded exercises, all the classic things that people receive, and nothing was like helping my situation at all. So I started seeking out different professionals. I eventually get into orthotics, orthopedic shoes, all the things that
All the
were,
things you would normally try. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, or that we think are good. And we'll,
Right.
we'll we'll plug a seed into that for a
Yeah.
sec. But eventually 2.5 years later, I took a surgical route, and I ended up getting operated on.
Okay.
And when I woke up, I thought all my problems would be over. And that's kind of when everything started, and it got worse
Oh
because
no.
my foot wasn't really much better. And then I started getting chronic hip pain and back pain that hadn't been there before the surgery. And I
Wow.
really felt broken at this point, and I was pretty depressed because I just couldn't do the things I like to do anymore, and I was in pain 24/7. And I'm 29, about to turn 30, but this was at the age of 19, then 20, 21, 22. So I could continue to deal with aches and pains at a pretty young age. And it was only till I start to take a deep dive and start looking outside the confines of institutionalized education did I start to like realize that maybe what I'm being told is not always is best for my body.
Sure.
And slowly but surely, I start to chip away at my problems, seeking out. I was going to different mastermind events and seminars, and seeking out different mentorship from different movement therapists around the world. And fast forward to
Mm-hmm.
today, and I own a clinic called From the Ground Up Physiotherapy. I have no more pain. I go hiking barefoot. I
Wow.
do I do slack lining so I can walk between trees. I do lots of fun things in my body, and I'm way more mobile and free in the way that I can move now than I was, prior to my injury. And that was only from really diving down more and more rabbit holes and seeking out different education from different sources, because the traditional model that I eventually decide, okay, screw medicine, I want to go into physiotherapy. And
Mm-hmm.
then I went into physiotherapy, and I was learning the exact same thing that was being given to me as
And it
treatment,
wasn't working, right?
and it wasn't working. And the
Wow.
reality is it doesn't really work for most people, because we go site of pain equals site of problem. So you got a knee problem. This is this tunnel vision focus of like only looking at the knee and doing lots of exercises around the knee, and maybe hands-on therapy and heating and icing and foam rolling and all the things that are all just chasing after symptoms, and they're not getting after the root cause of the problem, which is generally speaking the way that we load our body, how we move. And,
Mhm.
the quality of our movement determines the quality of our lives. And so when I start to teach myself how to move differently, I start to make incredible progress. And now, I can lift heavy, I can move freely and fluidly and, walk barefoot, which before for me was impossible. So that's
Right,
kind of,
right. Well, and movement is foundational to health, right? I mean, if you
yeah,
can't move, you can't be healthy. And as we age, the key is to stay moving.
yeah,
So
uh,
so
yeah,
that we don't get stuck and then we don't get injured. And
yeah,
you were 26 and you're thinking, oh gosh, just a ankle sprain, right?
yeah.
No big deal. And here you are 10 years later, and it was a huge deal because it compromised, I'm assuming, everything from head to toe, right?
For sure. Exactly. I mean, that's the whole idea of, the name of the company from the ground up. You don't build a building on a, sandy foundation. So it's the thing is that for whatever reason, our feet are very ignored in our society. They're like
They
these
are, right?
stinky little pieces of meat that go inside of our shoes, and we forget about them until the end of the day, until we go, oh, I can't wait to get my shoes off. Or, you get on an airplane and everyone's kicking their shoes off. But that's kind of the extent of our appreciation for our feet until we start having problems. And, that's the thing is that we need to learn to kind of create more gratitude around our bodies for what they could do for us
Yeah.
in a natural sense. Because when it comes down to feet, we think about good shoes, right? And we think about all the technology that our shoes have. We've probably heard of, gel shock technology and
Right.
motion control and foam this and whatever that, all these bells and whistles. But when I start to put more technology on my feet with shoes, what ends up happening is my high technology feet become very silly, very dumb feet.
I love
High
that.
tech shoes equals low tech feet. Low tech shoes equals high tech feet.
Interesting.
All a shoe was ever meant to do was protect the foot from the elements, but not impose on the feet. So what I mean by that is there's a bunch of different elements inside of our footwear that are kind of messing us up.
Okay.
So we look at obviously when we look at a high heeled shoe, we'll all agree that a triangle is not the shape of a foot, right?
Right.
We know that. It's very obvious. And so, when you shove all your toes into this very narrow toe box, your feet are obviously not happy. But you
Correct.
do it for the night because they look great, whatever it is. However, if we look at most shoes in the market, and I'm talking about 99.9% of shoes, Asics, New Balance, Nike, Brooks, Hoka, blah, blah, blah.
Whatever. Yep.
All the shoes are too tapered of the toe box. So yes, you might buy a wide shoe, but where is the widest part of the shoe that they're measuring your foot? At the ball of the foot,
But
not the tips of the toes. But if you look at a baby's foot, or you look at, an indigenous culture person's foot who's never worn shoes before, the ideal place where our feet are widest is at the tips of the toes. And now we start to take our feet that are supposed to be spread out, and even inside your Asics, they are not wide enough. And so your toes start getting a little squished together. And so
right.
now compound that over time, and bunions start to develop, more
Yeah.
dysmorphoma, balance issues, weak feet, all the things that we've been told are genetic are not genetic. The only thing genetic about bunions are the fact that your parents wore the exact same shoes as you did.
Fair enough. That's
So
what I tell my clients about so many things. Like it's not genetic, it's environmental, but
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So it's a
yeah,
huge environment. Exactly. It's
yeah.
we cop out and put genetics as like too much, and that's what I hear daily in my clinic. But yeah, I don't know. Are we on visual right now? Just so you can
We
see.
are, yeah. Show us
Yeah,
stuff.
so just like you'll see this like a wider toe box shoe,
Yeah,
right? So it a lot. Up in Montreal, we wear gloves or mittens when it gets freezing.
right,
The idea is that gloves, individual fingers allow my fingers to move, right? But
right.
if I wore mittens 24/7, well, my hands would start to look like mittens, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing with our shoes. If our feet are inside of something that compresses our toes, well, then our toes start to get squished together. And so now less balance in your body. It's like, it's very simple. What's more stable, a wide base of support or a narrow base?
Wide basis support, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so, the width of the toe box is one issue. But then another technology that we put inside of shoes is like this idea of like, for whatever reason, a lot of shoes tend to be higher at the heel than the toe. Now,
Okay.
it's very
Yeah.
obvious on a high heel shoe, 3-inch high heel. But again, inside of an Asics, and I just like to give that as an example because it's a very popular good shoe. I'm putting that in
Yes,
brackets for a second because
yes.
I personally don't believe it's a good shoe,
Okay.
is because the elevation of your heel pushes your body forward and now pushes all the way into the front of your feet. And now you have to exaggerate your lower back to prevent yourself from
So
falling
you're getting
over.
a lordosis going on.
Exactly. An
Yeah.
excessive lordosis and more pressure at your knees, more pressure in the forefeet. So you just have to make all
Mhm.
sorts of compensations. So when we're born with our heel and our toe flat to the floor. But all
Mhm.
of a sudden, like, some people will go like, oh, I thought flat shoes aren't good. It's like we've lost our minds to think like, well, you were born with your heel and your toe flat. So should that be the environment that your shoe is in? It's
Uh-huh.
just we get so accustomed to something that's not, and then we go flat. Our body has to make like, adjustments because it's just simply not adjusted to that. So we're
Right.
talking about wide, we're talking about flat. And then the most important element is flexibility. Our shoes should be able to bend, twist, and move in all directions, right?
Right.
So people be like, well, what about arch support? What about my orthotics? I have flat feet, etc. Different things that
Right.
are
Exactly.
people will say. It doesn't matter. Our feet are meant to move. Basically, the idea is that if you came to me with a neck problem and I put a brace on your neck and I
Hmm.
said, okay, you're not allowed to move your neck for the next year. Would you imagine your neck pain getting better or worse over time?
It would get worse, and then you would develop scar tissue, and you'd get stuck.
Well, what's happening to our feet is that basically when we start to take motion controlled shoes, we
Hmm.
basically block the foot from moving. Our feet are extremely, extremely complex. There's 26 bones in each foot with 33 joints. A joint is supposed to have range of motion, it's supposed to have movement.
Right.
So if you break your arm and you're in a cast, well, your arm gets stiff after being in a cast. Well, the
Mhm.
same thing that's happening to our feet. So we block natural movement from taking place, and hence this whole idea that, like, you know, if our feet get screwed up, then upstream consequences start happening as a result of the foot not moving well, not being strong enough to support the body.
Right. Right. Well, that makes sense. I'm
Yeah,
gonna, I'm feeling my feet right now. Like I got this pinky toe, right? That's been like
exactly. Yeah.
gravitating, kind of scooping underneath.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I have, like one thing
I
I do with my
totally get it.
clients, very
Uh-huh.
simple, is one, obviously we want to change the environment to put them into more wide toe box shoes. So there's
Right.
different companies that exist. I also get them to wear little toe spreaders that help to, widen
That's
their
hilarious. Okay.
yeah, so I basically I put them on, I call them frogs for them. Like, oh, when you get a pedicure and you put them
I
on,
was gonna
yeah.
say it's just like when we paint our toenails. You
But
have to put.
these ones allow your body, they're silicone, and you just wear them when you're chilling at your house barefoot and while you're, weight bearing. And so you
Uh-huh.
start to have your feet to start spreading out again. So you start to use your feet. It's just,
Yeah.
kind of reestablishing this neural connection between our brain and our feet again, so that our feet, become more adjusted to holding our bodies again.
Right. And I can imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong. So if your feet start the proprioception that's going on in your feet, so that feedback loop that's going up to your brain, that would
Yeah.
have to strengthen your brain. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I
Okay.
mean, one last element. So, an acronym that I like to use for people is WTF, what the foot. Okay.
What's
So
what?
we said W is the widest at the tips of the toes.
Yeah.
T, I haven't mentioned yet. And then we said flat and flexible. So the T is thin. Now you'll notice a shoe like this is extremely thin, right?
And
There's not a
right.
big sole on it. And you'll see shoes like, Hoka's or Asics again that have a
Yeah, the
lots and lots of cushioning between you
gigantic.
and the
Yeah.
ground. They're gigantic, like they look like moon shoes.
Yeah.
Now, when you hear the advertisements for them, what you often hear is it feels like I'm walking on a cloud, right? And
Right.
that's painted out to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you wore a blindfold on your eyes, would you be able to see?
No.
Well, when we wear a blindfold on our feet, we're not able to feel. So
Mm,
the idea is that we have as many nerve endings in our feet as we do in our hands. And our feet, again, are supposed to give that information about the ground beneath us to our brain. But what happens is, the older we get, what's happening is we're kind of like putting more and more and more cushioning on people's feet. So,
right.
like we'll call it, I was given the same thing, like grandpa shoes, so to say, like, the big cushiony, like we see orthopedic shoes that, like, the
Yeah.
older we get, the more we're disconnecting ourselves from the ground. Now, that doesn't seem to make sense if we're trying to, you know, develop balance and keep our balance throughout our whole life.
Sure.
So
Sure.
a lot of these shoe companies, these called natural footwear, they're protecting my foot so I'm not getting stabbed by glass, but they're protecting the sole of my foot, but I could still have feedback from the ground. I could still feel the pebbles beneath my feet. And it's
Sure.
a very unique experiencing walking in these types of footwear because you're feeling everything and you're just way more attuned to the way that you're walking. Oh, wow, I'm slamming my heel a lot. Let me soften my gait a bit, So there's
Hmm.
some very interesting things that happen when we just let our feet do their thing.
Right. That's amazing. So, I mean, that's going to help keep your hips aligned, your knees aligned, like, like you're saying from the ground up. That
So I was given orthotics for 5 years.
right.
And
I've worn
one of the
orthotics too, and I had to stop because I started getting a lot of pain from wearing them.
Yeah. So, I mean, sorry, may or may not, yeah, my foot right here. But one of the things, I got my foot here. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just explain this out loud to people that may not be watching on visual. One of the things, the biggest myths that we hear is flat feet are bad, right?
Right.
So what I want you to pay attention to is I'm going to bring this knee forward and tell me what happens to the foot.
It flattens.
It flattens. Now, is that bad or good? Well,
Well, I'm
that's
assuming if it's
very
with it, it's
It's
supposed to be that.
very, it's supposed, our feet are supposed to flatten.
Okay.
Now, when I'm not just saying the whole foot just collapses inwards, but what I am saying is our foot should flatten, widen, and spread with every footstep we take so that we absorb impact. But
Mm-hmm.
if I take arch supports and I block the foot from moving, well, now that trampoline effect, we could think about the foot like a trampoline. It should go down,
Mm-hmm.
spread out, and then boing, pop back up and create a stiffness to propel us forward. So our
Okay.
foot has the idea, it's an absorption and propulsion, propulsion. But if
Okay.
we block the foot from moving, well, now the foot kind of hits the ground like a cement block, and so the knee starts to take on more load. The back starts to take on more load. And so what I actually get to do for a lot of people who've been in orthotics for many years,
Yeah.
I teach their foot how to flatten properly, and all of a sudden they go, "Whoa, my feet feel lighter. I feel the ground more." And
Right.
profound changes start to happen pretty quickly when we start to re-educate the foot how to move again. So when I was in orthotics and I was a prisoner to them and I couldn't be without them at all, now I spend my entire day barefoot. Like I said, I go on hikes barefoot. I do
Yeah.
lots of different things always barefoot because that's how our feet evolved to be. And so that's the whole spiel with feet.
Right. So you have a whole program that retrains your feet, is what you're.
Yeah, it's like the feet, how they connect into the knees, the hips, the
Yeah.
back. So yeah, for
I
sure.
love it because like even when I'm sitting at standing at the counter barefoot in my house, right? So if I stand for a really long period of time, then all of a sudden you get kind of like pain in your hips and your back,
Yeah,
and like,
yeah,
what the heck? And if I put my have slides or whatever,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
I'll put those on, and then that helps, but it only helps for a little bit. It's sort of like
Yeah.
you're even if you buy the cushiest shoes, a week later you're like, these aren't really that great.
Yeah, well, one of the key, again, it's all about symptoms versus training your body differently. So
Yeah.
the way
Yeah.
that I would say, okay, you're standing for long periods of time. Now, would I start a race forward leaning or would I start it leaning back?
You would go forward.
Forward, right? Now, what I would invite someone to think about, like a lot of times people are doing, lunges or different movements in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
When they perform, or even just standing, and when we're standing and we're having one leg forward, so if let's say I was standing, I have my right leg forward and I bend my knee. What
Mm-hmm.
happens for many people is that their ribs actually go backwards, not
Oh,
not
mm-hmm.
stack over. So that's kind of my back taking on the load versus me
Sure.
shifting my weight forward, and all of a sudden my legs take on the load. So one of the basis of what I teach people is how to stack their bodies. So
Okay.
imagine you're about to start the race. Certainly you would want to bring your weight forward, not on your heel, but more in the middle foot and the front of the foot, right? So get your weight
Mm-hmm.
forward. And that's the basis of like all the positions I teach to my clients and my online people is how do I get the body to stack so that the load is going through our muscles rather than like hanging on to our joints and our knees and our back. So
Right.
yeah, whether or not you have your slides under this, if we understand like center of mass, it's a complex word to mean like stack your body. So think about Jenga,
Yeah.
the Jenga tower. Like obviously it falls when when it's not stacked properly. But if the blocks are stacked and we learn how to get our head over our heart, over our hips, over one leg, which is basically the essence of what we do every day, which is called walking. When we're
Yes.
balanced and we get our body over one leg and over the other leg, good things happen. But what happens is so many people, because of old injuries or certain movement patterns that they learned over time, is they don't know how to like fully commit their body weight over one leg and then take the leap of faith and get their body weight to the other. So they
Hmm.
start to live their life with like, some of their body over here or some over
Yeah.
there, somewhere where like one area is getting too short, one area is getting too long. And so it's just a process of, reteaching people how to open things up once they're in a stacked position. And
Right. Because
that's
when you have all this compromise going on, that's where the chronic pain,
exactly,
starts to
yeah.
creep in, and then you spend so much time trying to
Yeah.
unwind all of that. That makes so much sense. So what do you do? So once you have chronic pain, I mean, most people aren't, close to you in Montreal. So what do you do to help people?
So when someone comes to see me, I first of all I need to understand their story. Like
Mhm.
I want to make sure because so many people that come to see me have been around the houses. They've been to this physio, that chiro, whatever. And so for me, it's important that they understand because I understand immediately like what's going on in their bodies. It's more so that they understand like why that everything they've tried so far hasn't worked. Because I hear the same stories. So I've had this pain in my knee, my shoulder. I got, I'm taking my painkillers. I got a cortisone injection. I got my
Mhm.
massages. But again, the moment you stand up from a table after you've received treatment, and if the majority of your session was done lying down, does that translate to against gravity?
No.
No. And so, we go back to the same movement patterns, and maybe 2, 3 days later, after you felt a bit of temporary relief, the pain comes back, and they're like, "Shit, well, I tried
Right.
everything." So when someone comes to see me, I want to understand their story. I want to understand like what happened with their whole like what's their injury history? Because maybe their back pain right now is a result of an old ankle sprain that happened 5, 10, 25 years ago. Because
Hmm.
maybe they're not happy to put weight on there. So after I've taken a look at their story, we've understood their story. I'm gonna, of course, like what are your goals? Because everyone wants to get out of pain, but that's not a strong enough motivator to get someone to make change.
Right.
Because you could go ahead and drink a lot of alcohol or pop a bunch of painkillers and
And
you'll
get
get
out of
out of
pain.
pain.
Hmm.
But what's that pain stopping you from doing that, like, you really wanna get back to? Is it playing with your kids? Is it feeling more springy and light the way that you used to? Being able to go for a run with your friends, and now all of a sudden you can't since you lack that social element. So I need to make sure that people connect with their why, because that's what's gonna give them the compliance, the idea of, "Okay, why am I showing up?" Because if I'm showing up because my wife or my husband told me to come to physio, 9 times out of 10, that's not gonna work, you know?
Right. Hmm.
And from there, I'm gonna look at how someone's moving. So very simple movements. I'm gonna ask someone to bend down to touch their toes, to lean back, to side bend, to rotate. And I'm gathering a picture of like, where does their body happy to move and where is their body like shying away from? And of
Hmm.
course, my job is to basically get them into a stack and then reintroduce those patterns back into their body.
Right. Right.
And, through a series of weeks of, after every session, I'm always sending people over like a debrief with YouTube exercises. So they're not just getting a little sheet that says, like with Stickman, like
Yeah.
I want you to make sure they're doing it correctly. And I'm there to provide them feedback along the way. You know, progressively we get them stronger and moving better. Whereas before they might have felt their legs quivering, because many people quiver in my clinic because like their nervous system is getting so
Oh,
loaded in
yeah.
such new ways that their legs start shaking in my clinic to
Yeah.
very strong people. Like I work with a ton of athletes or Gen Pop, like, just regular
Yeah.
everyday folk dealing with pain. And when someone's nervous system gets challenged in a new way, the body starts reacting, not in a bad way, a good way, but
Right. Right. It's like, what do I do now, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So that's kind of the process how I work with people, where it's just progressively challenging people in activities that mimic the demands of their real life and the activities that they want to get back to. So there are some things I like to do on a table or, lying down, and there are useful things that I could do on the floor, certainly. But
Hmm.
I certainly have to progress someone to getting them standing. Otherwise, none of that's, gonna translate over to what they're trying to get back to.
Right. Because then you can't go from the ground up because they're not actually standing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's so great. Because this is so important because so many people who are in chronic pain, most of them have been stuck for a long time. Like, you were saying you had, quite a few years there where you're just stuck. And so it's hard to break out of the I'm never going to get well mentality,
Yeah.
right? And so I can imagine that that's part of your process as well.
100%. Yeah. Like mindset is a huge thing, and making sure people understand, like buy-in happens very quickly when we can reframe a weakness as potential. And
Mm,
all, like when I show someone an exercise, like I could be all theoretical and sound great. And like, yeah, they'll be a bit motivated because they like hear different words than what they've been told. But as soon as I get someone into a position and they say like, okay, you feel like this thing that I'm showing you looks so simple. Like they're like, why does this little movement looks like feel so hard in my body?
hard. Yeah.
That's okay. That's just where you're at. But you practice, and it's simple movements and pretty simple to execute in terms of like doing it. But very quickly after 2-3 reps, your legs are giving out. So we just need to, rep it out and give your nervous system a chance to assimilate, your muscles a chance to start to adapt. And pretty quickly, like I've had people with years and years of chronic pain get back to doing the things they love within like a matter of weeks or months, like not like a year. Like
Right.
what kills me inside sometimes is when people say like, I tried physio and it doesn't work. Physio is this very, very broad umbrella, and if you ask 10 physios for advice, you'll get 10 different pieces
And
of
different things.
advice.
Yeah.
And it's not about the word physical therapy or osteo or chiro. It's how does that individual empower you to take responsibility for your health,
Right.
not me being your fixer. I am no one's fixer. I guide people and they're doing all the work. I'm
Yep.
going to, for sure, be your support system, but
Yeah.
I can't do anything to fix your problems. And, so when physio didn't work, you didn't find the right person. That's all it is. And so again, I like chronic pain sucks. I was in chronic pain for a very long time, and it's very demoralizing. I know that firsthand. I was extremely, extremely depressed. And hope is important for the human body, like for the human system, for the human mind. And when you go to your doctor and your doctor says, well, you're just gonna have to learn to live with it. I find that it's very damaging when medical professionals say that. It's
Right.
just, if you don't know what you're doing and you say that to someone, you could just admit your shortcomings, that I don't have the tools to help you, but I know there's someone out there that does.
Mm-hmm.
Because when doctors, they're pretty high up in this hierarchy of our society, and they say like,
Right.
how many times we heard like the doctor says they're never going to walk again, and they walk again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two types of people in the world. Like someone that says, okay, you're never going to walk again. And the person says, okay, your words are my reality. Or the
Mm-hmm.
other one says, screw you. I'm going to, like, I'm not letting you dictate my future.
Right.
And so I just don't even know why a doctor would say that. Like, you're not going to get better. Like, you'll have to learn to live with that. Well, you're just squashing someone's hope. And
Mhm.
so much of getting better is,
It,
this
yeah.
trifecta: emotional,
Yeah.
spiritual, psychological well-being. If you believe that, 1% better will lead to a completely new you, as long as you're diligent and compliant and consistent,
Right.
then your body changes.
Right.
But if we don't believe our body can change and there's no potential for healing, well, guess what? There's no potential for healing,
No
like,
potential for hearing. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I always teach my clients, the body was designed to heal. We were created to heal. We just have to remove the interference and
yeah,
then give the body what it needs, and then the body can heal. And so this is such a key piece of this, because if you don't have proper structural alignment, and I deal with a lot of chiropractors and stuff, and there's many great, great ones out there. And I think that's really important as well. But I love what you're talking about here, because so many foundational things get missed, from, teaching your body how to walk barefoot. I mean, as a kid, you walk barefoot all the time. Like, you're constantly barefoot. And then as we grow older, we get into sports, and then, you wear the high heels as a woman, all those kind of things. Like, we kind of get out of that habit, but it shouldn't be a habit. It should just be like, okay, I go outside and I ground every day at lunch. I eat my lunch
yeah,
outside. I put my feet
yeah.
on the ground. Like, this needs to be, as I'm seeing, like, I need to get different shoes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as you're compensating, I was reading some of the stuff that you wrote and on some of your videos and stuff, like you even talk about slouching, like, because we're so busy compensating. And I can tell you, like, after sitting here for all day, like, doing podcast interviews and seeing clients online, like my back hurts when I'm done. And
Yeah.
I'm always like, I can't slouch, I can't slouch. So, even some of those types of things, I would love you to just, address
Yeah.
that
Yeah. For
too,
sure. For
because
sure.
there's so many things we've been taught, again, in
Mhm.
so many different arenas, that we're unwinding all these myths that we've been told that aren't true. So I would love you to address some of that. Just how do we, like, those of us who are sitting here all day, like, what do we need to look like? Do we need to slouch back in our chair? Like, what's our scoop?
Yeah. So, well, how many times have we all been told in our lives, sit up straight,
Right up
stand
straight.
straight, chest up, shoulders down and back, pull your head back and be in, and again, quotations, good posture.
Right.
Now, what I want you to do is I want you to take your hands together for me and I want you to squeeze as hard as you can. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I want you to squeeze as hard as you can for the next 12 hours. Okay. Well,
Doesn't work. Yeah.
that's what's happening when we take our hands on our lower back and we sit up straight. Well, what we're doing is we're engaging our lower back muscles, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
just like your hands don't want to be engaged like maximally for more than a few seconds, nor does our lower back.
Yeah.
And before, well, along my journey of pain, I went to India for a little volunteer trip, and I saw 80-year-olds there that could do, a full ass to grass deep squat where they allow their body to be fully relaxed. When
Uh-huh.
you're in a deep, deep squat, your back is not straight.
Right.
It's round and relaxed. Watch children play. They could drop down into it no problem, right?
Right.
So that is the natural resting posture of the human being, the deep squat,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's what we've done for hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
years, sat on the floor, and we allowed our spines to relax. But then grandma came and slapped you with a ruler or whatever, and now told you to pop
That's
your chest up.
right.
And so your back should naturally round and relax when we sit down. But then all of a sudden, we're told it's not okay.
Because that's the
Now,
proper way to sit.
the
As a
proper way to
lady, you
sit is
sit up
to
straight, right?
fully allow my back to chill. Like, if I was going to be in a deep squat right now, I would allow my back to be rounded and relaxed.
Right.
So I want to do the same thing when I'm sitting in a chair. If I was deep squatting, I'd have my back relaxed. So one thing that like we can encourage is don't find the front of your hamstrings. Like allow your butt to fully tuck under. Give
Okay.
yourself bad posture. And I'm putting
Yeah.
that bad. And now sigh and let your ribs come down and let your shoulders round.
That feels lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where you should be all the time. But
Interesting.
now, wait, what about my shoulders? They're rounded forward. Okay, well,
Right? Doesn't that
that's
keep them rounded
okay.
forward? Yeah.
No, our shoulders are meant to be forward. They're not meant to be back here. There's a difference between aesthetics and function, right? It's the
Right.
same thing with our shoes. Why do we wear pointy-toed shoes? Why do all the shoes
Because
look
they're
more
cute.
narrow? Because they're
Yeah.
cuter. But why do gloves look like hands? Because it lets our hands function properly. Why do our shoes look like weird things? Because it looks good, but it screws up our feet, So there's trade-offs that happen. And I lost my ego and said, screw it, I want to feel good in my body. And so
Right.
I started wearing, again, this looks like a normal shoe. It looks slightly different because there's a wider toe box by a little bit. But it feels amazing because now when I show all my clients this and I get, I say feeling is believing. They wear
Yeah.
my shoes. I have like a bunch of samples here for people to try.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whoa, I get them to put on one of my shoes and one of their shoes. And they're like, this one, it feels like my toes are floating. I'm like, no, that's just called not being compressed.
Uh-huh.
So like their
Yeah.
toes are being constantly squished. So it's the same thing. It's like with our sitting postures, if we just give ourselves permission to relax and slouch,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're in a much better place for our lower backs to actually disengage and relax. Because
Right.
most people's lower back pain is not a result of them having weak backs, which is what the doctor will tell them, or a lot of
Yeah.
physios,
Yeah.
you need to strengthen your back more. No, we just said that the back is always engaged. So what we need to do is relax the back and send load into the legs for them to do the job. And then all of a sudden, years and years of chronic pain go away within a matter of a few weeks.
That's
It's
amazing.
it's it's pretty cool. But unfortunately, it's like, okay, how do I get this out to more people? Because the
Yeah.
standard of the industry is very like, I did this very cool mentorship out of the UK when I first started my clinic 3.5 years ago, and I was a bit quieter from a client standpoint, and I just was consuming all the knowledge. And I teach some seminars here and there, but it's like, okay, like this needs to be changed at a school level, like that every physio is not taught. Like we're
Yeah.
hyper obsessing over anatomy and like what structures are there. I don't have to like know anatomy to help people if I just show people positions.
Yeah.
If I get people in new positions, their body responds, poof, pain is gone.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what do you do with people? I mean, because I'm sure are you thinking about lifestyle and those types of things too? So people who are overweight or they have a bad diet, are you incorporating those types of things
Yeah,
too?
definitely. Like
Yeah.
not every client I'm talking about nutrition, sleep,
Sure.
but certainly I'm screening it. Like I'm asking
Yeah.
people like on a little questionnaire, like to just rate their stress, rate their nutrition.
Yeah.
Um, and depending on certainly like the appearance of the person, like I'm gonna discuss it in a very like framing in an inflammatory perspective
Yeah.
because I'm like I want to be like obviously kind and not
Yes.
sensitive, but like look, did you know that there are certain foods that impact your inflammation in your body? Like, what do you mind us talking about your, what you eat on a daily basis and just discussing general concepts?
Sure.
I geeked out on lots of nutrition and I'm dialed in that way, but um certainly depends on the individual. But yeah, we'll talk about overarching principles for sure.
Yeah.
Same thing with like, how are you sleeping? You sleep like crap. Well, we got to address that. So
Hmm.
there's certain basic things that we could do, talking about, light exposure in the morning, reducing light
Right.
exposure at nighttime, different principles.
Different.
And obviously like,
Yeah.
you know, moving your body more and, draining your battery during the day will help you sleep better at night. And, but for sure, one thing I talk about with almost every person is stress management. Um,
Good.
and I'm addressing that through a lot of breathing strategies. So getting people, um, one thing that we're all told when we're stressed, take a deep breath, right?
Right. Hmm.
Wrong advice. What we want to learn how to do is long exhales, not inhales. So this
Hmm.
charges my body up, right? What actually calms my body and gets my body to slouch. Now, when I inhale, I don't want to sniff back up. I actually want to make sure my inhales are very quiet. So what I'm coaching people is very quiet inhales, not noisy. So it slowly
Sure.
expands our ribs. But on the exhale, we want to learn how to, drop down the ribs so that the low back can start to relax.
Okay.
Because imagine you were like walking on the street and I was going to scare you, right? So I go, boo, I'm around a corner.
Yeah.
Your body is going to pop up. And that's the state of our body when we're in fight or flight, or just this moderate state of
Mhm.
stress that we all find ourselves in, is that our chest is up, kind of like good posture, so to
Yep.
say. And add on the high heels, add on everything that's basically pushing our bodies forward in life. And so what we need to do is bring ourselves back by breathing out, learning not to go into this, chest up
Mhm.
posture. So again, I think there's a lot of things in gym environments that we're always coaching chest up. Don't like that. I coach people to slouch all the time. And I get very unique results with people because I'm going against everything they've been told their entire life.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know even when I'm teaching people to get out of sympathetic mode for their digestion so that we can, they can eat and digest better. Sometimes I'll have to have people actually go sit like cross-legged on the floor and just relax like that while they're
Yeah,
eating,
just
just in
getting
a
into a
very
ball, right?
comfy position, and you look at
100%.
different cultures and they do that. They sit on the
Yeah,
ground and they're
yeah,
relaxed and, we're stuck in our chairs all stiff and, eating properly. So there's
yep.
so much to what you're saying. I am thoroughly enjoying this. This is great. So what would you like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, like, first of all, kick your shoes off. Be
Yeah.
barefoot at your house, not socks, barefoot. Go get yourself some toe
Why
spreaders.
not socks? Because they're constricting?
Yeah, because you don't feel as much, and like
What do you
one of
do
the
when your
reasons.
toes are cold?
Well, your feet are cold because your feet are your muscles aren't pumping at all. Get your
Okay,
feet
fair
pumping a
enough.
little, you know.
Uh-huh.
Um, so be barefoot, slouch, get on the ground more for sure. Like you said, put your bare feet on the ground. Um, and check out like natural footwear. So I could send you, like a list of shoes that you
Oh,
could
that'd
share with
be
the
great. Yeah,
audience.
I
And
can
things
share that in
like,
the show notes with everybody.
you know, one thing that I'll caveat everything is that, I'm talking about very thin footwear and wide and flat and flexible. I think one note to make is that for some, it's too shocking to the body to go from like a Hoka
Oh,
to this. And
yeah.
so there's actually a company in the US called Ultra, Altra,
Mhm.
that does make a wide toe box, makes it flat, makes it flexible, but it does have some cushioning. So it's like a transition away
That's nice.
from.
Yeah.
So I think, that is a great place for a lot of people to start. But yeah, just let your feet, trust your feet to, carry your body. And if you do have pain, well, I have a program that's available that teaches people all the same exercises that I'm teaching to my one-on-one clients here in my clinic, that I put together into like, easy to follow along collection of videos. It's, very simple, easy to follow in your own home. It don't require
Yeah.
any fancy equipment. And that's, teaching all the principles of stacking, about squatting, about bending, about moving your body in 3 dimensions, so that we could take the stress out of one area and redistribute it through more areas.
Mhm.
What's nicer, a Christmas tree that's all lit up or just one light?
Right.
No,
Right.
we want the whole body lit up and working together, rather than that painful area absorbing all the load all the time. And so if people are interested in following that, anywhere Ground Up Physio, so Ground Up and then Physio is PHYSIO.
Okay.
People could check out my, my Instagram page, Facebook, YouTube, all that jazz. And then they'll find the links for the program
Yeah, they'll
there.
be all in the links down
Yeah,
below. Absolutely. This has been fantastic, Greg. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to buy your program, and I'm going to go change my shoes
sounds
for
great.
sure. So for sure. So I hope all of you have enjoyed this interview as much as I have. This has just been a pleasure. So make sure that you like, subscribe, share with everyone in your circle, this interview and all the interviews with Take Back My Brain. I appreciate you as my audience, and I will see you in the next episode.